Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the screen again. The numbers were still there, blinking in the darkness of the communications room. Station Titan 7 was quiet this time of night. Most of the crew was sleeping, but Jake had the night shift. He liked it that way. Space was peaceful when everyone else was resting. The signal had started 3 hours ago. At first, Jake thought it was just space noise. The universe was full of radiation and cosmic winds that made strange sounds on their equipment. But this was different. This had a pattern. "Lisa, come look at this," Jake called to his partner. Lisa Beck was in the next room, checking the other monitoring systems. She walked over, her coffee cup steaming in the cold air of the station. "What do you have?" Lisa asked, leaning over Jake's shoulder to see the screen. "I think someone is trying to talk to us," Jake said. He pointed to the wave patterns on his monitor. "Look at these spikes. They repeat every 30 seconds, but they are not random. Someone made this signal." Lisa sat down at the station next to him. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, running the signal through different filters. The space around Jupiter was always noisy with radiation, but their computers were good at cleaning up signals. "You are right," Lisa said after a few minutes. "This is artificial. Someone built this transmission." She paused and looked at Jake with wide eyes. "Jake, this is not human." The two officers worked for the next hour, using every tool they had to clean up the signal. Slowly, the static faded away. What remained made both of them stop breathing for a moment. The signal contained numbers. Simple math problems that any intelligent species would understand. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. These were followed by more complex equations, then star charts showing the position of nearby systems. But the most shocking part came at the end of the transmission. Video images. The pictures were fuzzy and broken, but clear enough to understand. They showed a city with tall, graceful buildings that looked like they were grown instead of built. Strange creatures moved through the streets. They looked like plants that had learned to walk, with green skin and flowing movements. Then the images changed. The sky above the city turned dark with enormous ships. These vessels were different from the peaceful buildings below. They were black and ugly, covered in spikes and weapons. They looked like giant insects made of metal and hate. The attack began in the video. Beams of red light shot down from the dark ships, destroying the beautiful buildings. The plant-like creatures ran in panic, but they had nowhere to hide. More ships landed, and things that looked like giant bugs with too many legs came out. They killed everything they found. The video ended with one of the plant creatures holding some kind of recording device. Its face was covered in what might have been tears. It spoke in a language Jake and Lisa could not understand, but its meaning was clear. This was a cry for help. "We need to call Captain Henderson right now," Lisa said, her voice shaking. Jake was already reaching for the emergency communication button. Within minutes, Captain Roy Henderson arrived in the communications room. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes became very alert when he saw what Jake and Lisa had found. "How long ago did this signal start?" Henderson asked. "About 4 hours," Jake replied. "The transmission repeats every hour, but it gets weaker each time. Whoever sent this is running out of power." Henderson studied the images on the screen. The scenes of destruction played over and over. The captain had served in the human military for 30 years. He had seen war before, but this was different. This was the complete destruction of innocent people who could not fight back. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," Henderson ordered. "Priority 1. It took 20 minutes to establish a secure connection to Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the main screen, looking annoyed at being woken up. But her expression changed quickly when she saw the alien transmission. "How do we know this is real?" Sullivan asked after watching the video twice. "The signal contains mathematical proofs and star charts that match our observations," Lisa explained. "The transmission source is approximately 47 light-years from Earth, in a system we have never explored." "And you believe this is a distress call?" "Yes, ma'am," Henderson replied. "Someone is asking for help." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her thinking, weighing options that he could not imagine. Finally, she spoke. The attack shown in this video. How recent do you think it is? Jake looked at his data. Based on the signal, strength, and the way it is degrading, I estimate the transmission was sent between 6 and 10 days ago. That means if we responded immediately, it would take us at least 3 weeks to reach their location, Sullivan said. These people might already be dead. They might be, Henderson agreed. But what if they are not? What if some of them are still alive, still fighting, still hoping someone will hear their call and come to help? Sullivan stared at the images of destruction on her screen. She watched the plant-like creatures running from the insect monsters. She saw the beautiful city burning. I need to speak with Admiral Collins, she said finally. If we are going to do this, we are going to do it right. The connection ended, leaving Jake, Lisa, and Captain Henderson alone with the alien signal. It continued to repeat, growing weaker with each transmission. Somewhere in the darkness of space, an unknown species was calling for help. Jake looked at the star charts, calculating distances and travel times. If Earth decided to respond, it would be the longest military mission in human history. They would be traveling to help people they had never met, to fight enemies they did not understand. Do you think we will go? Lisa asked quietly. Captain Henderson watched the video of the attack one more time. I think, he said slowly, that if there is one thing humans cannot ignore, it is someone calling for help. The signal continued to broadcast into the void, weaker now but still clear. Somewhere in the universe, someone was still hoping for rescue. Admiral Pete Collins stood on the bridge of the UHS Vengeance and watched 847 human warships prepare for hyperspace jump. The largest fleet in human history was about to travel farther from Earth than any human had ever gone before. They were going to help aliens they had never met fight enemies they knew nothing about. Collins was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a fighter pilot. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets for 20 years. But this mission was different from anything he had ever done. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, Admiral, reported Captain Mary Foster from the navigation station. Begin jump sequence, Collins ordered. Destination, the Corvani system. The stars stretched into lines of light as the massive fleet entered hyperspace. The journey would take 3 weeks. Collins used that time to learn everything he could about the aliens they were going to help and the enemies they would fight. Commander Steve Parker was the fleet's expert on alien life. He had studied the transmission from the distressed aliens for days, trying to understand what kind of beings they were. He called them the Corvani because that was a word that appeared often in their language. The Corvani are plant-based life forms, Parker explained to the senior officers during their first briefing. Their technology is biological. They grow their buildings and vehicles instead of building them with metal and plastic like we do. Collins studied the images on the briefing screen. The Corvani cities looked like gardens with buildings that twisted upward like giant trees. Their vehicles moved smoothly without visible engines, probably powered by some kind of biological process. What about their military? Asked Colonel Amy Foster, who commanded the fleet's Marines. That is the problem, Parker said sadly. The Corvani do not seem to have much of a military. Their society appears to be peaceful. They have some defensive weapons, but nothing designed for war against a species like their attackers. The attackers were very different. The fleet's computers had analyzed every frame of the video transmission, and what they found was disturbing. The enemy ships were covered in armor that looked like insect shells. Their weapons fired biological acids that ate through the Corvani buildings. The attacking soldiers were 6-legged creatures with claws and mandibles. We are calling them devourers, Parker continued. Based on their attack patterns and ship designs, we believe they are a nomadic species that travels from world to world, consuming everything they find. General Nick Barnes, who commanded all the Marines in the fleet, studied the tactical data. How many ships do they have? Unknown, Parker replied, but based on the size of their attack on the Corvani homeworld, we estimate at least several thousand vessels. Collins listened to all of this information and felt a familiar feeling in his stomach. It was the same feeling he had gotten before every major battle of his career. The enemy was strong, numerous, and had no mercy. But they had made one mistake. They had hurt innocent people where humans could see it. What do we know about their combat capabilities? Collins asked. Colonel Foster pulled up new data on the screen. Their ships appear to be biological, like living creatures bred for war. They rely on overwhelming numbers and terror tactics. They have never faced an enemy with advanced metal-based technology like ours. Good, Collins said. Terror tactics work both ways. During the second week of travel, the fleet intercepted more transmissions from the Corvani system. The news was bad. The Devourers had finished destroying the main Corvani worlds and were now attacking what appeared to be nursery planets, where the Corvani raised their young. Captain Tony Lewis of the destroyer UHS Retribution was monitoring enemy communications when he discovered something that made everyone angry. The Devourers were not just killing adult Corvani. They were systematically destroying the nursery worlds, killing billions of Corvani children who had never hurt anyone. Admiral, Lewis reported during the daily briefing, the Devourers have located a nursery system with an estimated population of 5 billion young Corvani. Based on their current movement, they will reach that system in 4 days. The bridge was silent. Every human officer understood what this meant. If they arrived, too late, they would find only empty worlds and the remains of a genocide. Can we arrive in time? Collins asked the navigation officer. If we push the engines beyond normal limits and exit hyperspace at the edge of the system, we can arrive in 3 days, Captain Foster replied. Do it, Collins ordered. Push the engines as hard as they will go. The fleet increased speed, racing through hyperspace toward a system they had never seen to save people they had never met. The stress on the ship engines was enormous, but no one complained. Every human in the fleet understood what was at stake. On the third week of travel, long-range sensors detected the Devourer fleet. The enemy had over 10,000 ships of various sizes surrounding the Corvani system. Their largest vessels were enormous, the size of cities covered in weapons and armor. Admiral, reported Commander Bill Hayes from the sensor station, we are detecting a single Devourer scout ship moving toward our position. They know we are coming. Collins looked at the tactical display. One enemy ship was approaching his fleet of 800 vessels. The arrogance was insulting. Signal from the scout ship, Admiral, reported the communications officer. Put it on speakers, Collins said. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. It sounded like insects clicking and buzzing, but their computers translated it into words. Unknown vessels you enter claimed hunting territory. Withdraw immediately or be consumed like the local prey species. Collins looked around his bridge at his officers. Several of them were smiling, but their smiles were not friendly. They were the smiles of predators who had just been challenged by something smaller than themselves. Open a channel, Collins ordered. All frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Collins spoke slowly and clearly, making sure every word was translated correctly. Unknown hostile forces, you will cease your attacks on civilian populations immediately. You have 10 minutes to begin withdrawing from this system. This is your only warning. The response came quickly. Inferior species will be consumed. Your ships will feed our young. Collins nodded to his tactical officer. Mr. Davis, signal all ships, combat alert, weapons free. Show these things what happens when they threaten innocence in front of Deathworlders. 847 human warships powered up their weapons and prepared for battle. The Devourer scout ship, confident in its superiority, continued its approach. It would not survive the next 10 minutes. The Devourer scout ship was 3 kilometers long and looked like a giant insect made of black metal and bone. It moved through space with confidence, as if it owned the universe. Behind it, 10,000 more ships waited in the Corvani system, expecting their scout to deal with these new creatures quickly. Commander Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the cruiser UHS Thunderbolt and watched the enemy ship approach. She had been fighting space pirates and rebels for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The alien vessel was covered in spikes and claws, designed to frighten anyone who saw it. "Admiral Collins, this is Commander Stone." She spoke into her communication device. "Request permission to engage the hostile vessel." Collins's voice came back immediately. "Permission granted, Commander. All ships, you are weapons-free. Show them what Earth brings to a fight." Stone smiled and turned to her weapons officer. "Mr. Clark, target their main hull. Full power to forward guns." The human fleet opened fire. The space around the Devourer scout ship suddenly filled with death. Plasma bolts, laser beams, and kinetic projectiles struck the alien vessel from dozens of directions. The Devourers had built their ship to intimidate peaceful species like the Corvani. They had not built it to fight humans. The first volley of human weapons tore through the scout ship's armor like it was made of paper. Explosions erupted along its hull as human plasma cannons found weak points in the alien design. The Devourer ship tried to return fire, but its biological weapons were too slow and too primitive. Captain Linda Hayes commanded the battleship UHS Warhammer, the most powerful vessel in the human fleet. Her ship carried the largest guns ever, built by humanity, weapons designed to destroy space stations and enemy fleets. "Target their power core," Hayes ordered her weapons team. "One shot, maximum power." The Warhammer's main gun charged with enough energy to power a small city. The barrel, 200 meters long, aimed at the center of the enemy ship where sensors detected their main power source. "Firing," announced the weapons officer. The shot was a spear of pure energy that crossed the distance between ships in less than a second. It struck the Devourer scout ship directly in its core and punched completely through from front to back. For a moment, the alien vessel continued moving through space as if nothing had happened. Then it began to break apart. First, small pieces fell away, then larger sections. Finally, the entire ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris that could be seen from several light minutes away. The battle had lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. On the bridge of Admiral Collins's flagship, the sensor officer stared at his instruments in amazement. "Admiral, the enemy vessel has been completely destroyed. No survivors detected." Collins nodded calmly, as if destroying alien warships was something humans did every day. "Signal all ships, maintain formation, and proceed toward the inner system. It looks like we have their attention now." The destruction of their scout ship sent shockwaves through the Devourer fleet. In the thousands of years they had been traveling through space, consuming worlds and destroying civilizations, they had never lost a ship so quickly or so completely. This Devourer fleet was controlled by several massive command ships called Hive Queens. These vessels contained the intelligent leaders of the swarm, creatures that had lived for centuries and had never known defeat. The largest of these, designated Hive Queen Prime, immediately began emergency protocols. Messages flashed between the Devourer ships at the speed of light. Reserve fleets from 3 nearby systems received orders to join the main swarm. Within hours, the enemy fleet began to grow as reinforcements arrived through hyperspace. But the Devourers were not the only ones sending messages. Deep in the ruins of the Corvani homeworld, a small group of survivors received the news that someone had answered their distress call. Elder botanist Veltar was one of the few Corvani leaders still alive. He had been hiding in underground tunnels with several hundred other survivors when their sensors detected the human fleet. Using a damaged communication array, Veltar managed to contact Admiral Collins directly. The human computers translated his words from the musical language of the Corvani into something the humans could understand. "Unknown beings," Veltar's message began. "We are grateful beyond words that someone has heard our call for help. We had given up hope that anyone would come." Collins responded immediately. "This is Admiral Collins of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal and came as quickly as we could. What is your current situation?" "We are few," Veltar replied sadly. "Most of our people are dead. The Devourers destroyed our cities, our ships, our way of life. We have perhaps 1 million survivors scattered across several worlds, hiding in whatever shelters we could find." "Understood," Collins said. "We are here to help. Can you provide intelligence about enemy positions and capabilities?" For the next several hours, Veltar and the other surviving Corvani leaders shared everything they knew about the Devourers. The news was worse than the humans had expected. The enemy swarm contained over 10,000 ships of various sizes. Their largest vessels carried millions of warrior drones, all controlled by hive minds that felt no fear or mercy. The Devourers had been attacking civilizations for thousands of years. They consumed everything organic on a planet, leaving behind only dead rock. They had destroyed hundreds of species, and were now working their way through Corvani space, planet by planet. They will not negotiate, Veltar warned. They do not take prisoners. They exist only to consume and destroy. And now they know about your species. If you retreat, they will eventually find your homeworld and do to your people what they have done to mine. Collins listened to all of this information and made calculations in his head. 10,000 enemy ships against his 800. The odds were not good by any reasonable standard. Elder Veltar, Collins said finally, how many Corvani civilians are still alive in this system? Perhaps 50,000 on the nursery worlds, Veltar replied. They are hiding in deep shelters, but the Devourers will find them soon. Collins looked around his bridge at his officers. They were all listening to the conversation, all understanding what these numbers meant. 50,000 innocent lives hanging in the balance, protected only by 800 human ships against an enemy fleet more than 10 times their size. Elder Veltar, Collins said, we are going to need detailed information about Devourer ship types, weapons capabilities, and command structure. Send us everything you have. You are still going to fight them? Veltar asked in amazement. Even knowing how many ships they have? Collins smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Elder, you asked for help, and help is what you are going to get. We did not come this far to turn around at the first sign of a fair fight. Captain Stone, listening from her own ship, spoke up on the command frequency. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the inner system. It looks like the main Devourer fleet is forming up for battle. Good, Collins replied. Signal all ships battle stations. Let's go introduce ourselves properly to these things. The human fleet accelerated toward the inner system, where 10,000 alien warships waited for them. Behind them, the debris of the destroyed scout ship drifted through space, a warning that the Devourers chose to ignore. They would not make that mistake again. The Devourer fleet moved like a dark cloud across the Corvani system. 10,000 ships of different sizes spread out in a formation that had destroyed hundreds of civilizations. At the center were the massive Hive Queen vessels, each one the size of a human city and filled with millions of warrior drones. Admiral Collins watched the enemy formation on his tactical display and smiled. The Devourers were doing exactly what he had hoped they would do. They were spreading out to surround his smaller fleet, trying to attack from all directions at once. They think like insects, Collins said to his tactical officer. They swarm their prey and overwhelm them with numbers. But insects have one weakness. What is that, Admiral? Asked Captain Foster. They do not think like individuals. Cut off the head and the body dies. Collins opened a channel to all ships in his fleet. All commanders, this is Admiral Collins. The enemy is attempting to surround us. Let them. When they close to weapons, range, we implement dragon formation. Target their command ships first. Once their leadership is dead, the drones will be lost. Dragon formation was a human battle tactic developed during the war against the Mars colonies 50 years ago. It involved concentrating all firepower on the enemy's most important targets, while using speed and maneuverability to avoid getting trapped. Commander Troy Bennett commanded Squadron 7, 12 destroyers positioned on the fleet's right flank. As the Devourer ships moved to surround the humans, Bennett saw an opportunity. All ships in Squadron 7, follow my lead, Bennett ordered. We are going to use the asteroid field as cover and hit their left formation from behind. Bennett's ships accelerated toward a cluster of asteroids floating between two gas giant planets. The Devourers saw them coming but did not understand human tactics. They assumed the human ships were trying to run away. Instead, Bennett led his squadron through the asteroid field using maneuvers that would have been impossible for the larger Devourer ships. The destroyers emerged behind the enemy formation and opened fire on their rear ships before the aliens knew what was happening. 12 human destroyers attacked 300 Devourer vessels from behind. It should have been suicide. Instead, it became a massacre. The human ships fired quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons into the unprotected rear sections of the alien vessels. Devourer ships, designed to attack forward, had minimal rear armor. They began exploding one after another as human weapons found their weak points. Captain Susan Clark commanded the carrier UHS Normandy, which carried 200 fighter craft and their pilots. As the main battle began, she launched every fighter she had toward the enemy fleet. Lieutenant Carl Young and Lieutenant Maria Santos led the first wave of fighters into combat. They had trained for years in small craft tactics, but nothing had prepared them for fighting giant alien insects in space. "Stay close to me, Maria," Carl said over the radio as they approached a group of Devourer medium ships. "These things do not know how to fight small, fast targets." The two pilots dove toward the alien ships, firing their weapons at the joints and connection points in the enemy armor. The Devourer ships tried to swat them like flies, but human pilots were too fast and too smart. Maria discovered that the alien ships had a blind spot directly underneath their main hulls. She flew beneath a Devourer cruiser and fired all her missiles into its belly. The alien ship broke in half and exploded, sending debris flying in all directions. "Nice shot, Maria," Carl called out. "All fighters, target the underside of enemy vessels. That is their weak point." Within minutes, every human pilot in the battle was using Maria's discovery. The Devourer ships found themselves under attack from below, where their sensors and weapons could not reach effectively. But the real horror for the Devourers came when human Marines began boarding their ships. General Nick Barnes had spent 30 years learning how to fight in space. He knew that the best way to defeat an enemy was to take their ships away from them. When several damaged Devourer vessels tried to retreat, Barnes led his Marines in boarding attacks. Major Kevin White commanded the first boarding party to successfully capture a Devourer ship. His soldiers used plasma cutters to burn through the alien hull, then entered the vessel wearing full combat armor. What they found inside was worse than any human nightmare. The Devourer ship was filled with organic corridors that pulsed like the inside of a living creature. Warrior drones, each one the size of a human but with 6 legs and razor-sharp claws, attacked the Marines from every direction, but the Devourers had never fought humans in close combat. They relied on overwhelming their enemies with fear and numbers. They had never faced soldiers who fought back harder when they were afraid. "Keep moving," White shouted to his men as they advanced through the alien ship. "Do not let them surround. You use your plasma weapons to burn out their hive nodes." The Marines discovered that each Devourer ship was controlled by several organic computers called hive nodes. These living machines coordinated the actions of all the warrior drones on the ship. When the Marines destroyed a hive node with their plasma weapons, entire sections of the enemy vessel stopped fighting. White's tactical innovation spread quickly through the human fleet. Marines began targeting hive nodes specifically, causing Devourer ships to lose coordination and become helpless. The battle raged for 18 hours across 12 different areas of the Corvani system. Human ships fought with a combination of advanced technology and centuries of military experience. They used every trick they had learned in wars against each other, adapted for fighting aliens in space. The turning point came when Admiral Collins implemented Protocol Omega. This was a human military doctrine that focused all available firepower on enemy command and control systems. "All ships concentrate fire on the Hive Queen vessels," Collins ordered. "Ignore the smaller ships, kill their commanders first." Every human weapon in the fleet turned toward the massive Hive Queen ships at the center of the Devourer formation. These vessels, which had coordinated the destruction of hundreds of worlds, suddenly found themselves under attack from 800 human warships firing at once. The first Hive Queen died in a storm of plasma and nuclear fire. The second lasted only minutes longer. As each command ship was destroyed, thousands of Devourer vessels began to lose coordination. Commander Stone, still fighting from the UHS Thunderbolt, watched her sensors as the enemy formation began to fall apart. "Admiral, the Devourer fleet is fragmenting. They are losing central command." Collins nodded with satisfaction. "All ships, continue the attack. Do not let any of them escape to warn others of our capabilities." Captain Hayes aboard the UHS Warhammer, was pursuing a group of fleeing devourer ships when her sensors detected something that made her smile. "Admiral, I am reading massive explosions from the enemy nursery ship near the fourth planet. It appears the Corvani have been rescued." Throughout the battle, human rescue ships had been evacuating Corvani civilians from the worlds under attack. Captain Dan Morgan of the medical ship, UHS Mercy, had personally overseen the rescue of over 30,000 Corvani children from underground shelters. As the 18th hour of battle ended, the Corvani system was quiet for the first time in months. Of the 10,000 devourer ships that had entered the system, fewer than 300 escaped into hyperspace. The rest were destroyed or captured. Human casualties were surprisingly light. 23 ships lost, 847 personnel killed, 2,103 wounded. For a battle against an enemy that outnumbered them more than 10-1, the human fleet had achieved what military historians would later call impossible. Admiral Collins stood on his bridge and looked at the tactical display showing the debris of the Devourer fleet scattered across the system. His communications officer was already receiving grateful messages from Corvani survivors on every world. "Signal all ships," Collins ordered. "Well done. Begin search and rescue operations for any remaining Corvani civilians. And someone send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we found out what happens when genocidal aliens meet Deathworlders." In the ruins of the Corvani homeworld, Elder Veltar emerged from his hiding place and looked up at the stars. For the first time in months, the sky was empty of enemy ships. Instead, he could see the lights of human vessels moving slowly through space, searching for survivors to rescue. The Devourers had learned too late that humans were different from every other species they had encountered. Humans did not surrender when outnumbered. They did not run when faced with superior forces. When someone called for help, humans answered, no matter the cost. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after the Battle of Corvani Prime, Captain Dan Morgan walked through the rebuilt sections of the main Corvani city. Human engineers and Corvani survivors worked side by side, using both human technology and Corvani biological growth methods to repair the damage. The medical ship UHS Mercy had become a floating hospital, treating wounded from both species. Morgan had discovered that human medical techniques worked surprisingly well on plant-based aliens, while Corvani healing methods could help humans recover from injuries faster than anyone had thought possible. "Captain Morgan," called Elder Veltar as he approached through the garden-like corridors of the rebuilt city center. The old Corvani moved slowly but with dignity, his green skin showing new growth where human doctors had helped heal his injuries. "Elder Veltar," Morgan replied with a smile. "How are the children settling into the new shelters?" "Better than we dared hope," Veltar said. "Your people have been more than generous. We have food, medicine, and safety for the first time in months. But Captain, I must ask you something that troubles me." Morgan nodded for him to continue. "Why did your species come to help us? We had nothing to offer you. No trade goods, no technology you needed, no territory you wanted. Why did humans risk their lives for strangers?" Morgan thought about the question for a moment. It was not the first time a Corvani had asked him this. "Elder, on my world we have a saying. It goes like this. When someone calls for help, good people answer. It does not matter if you know them or not. It does not matter what they can give you in return. If someone needs help and you can provide it, then you help." Veltar was quiet for a long moment. "This concept is difficult for us to understand. In our observations of other species, most civilizations act only for their own benefit." "Then, you have been watching the wrong civilizations," Morgan said simply. News of the human victory at Corvani Prime had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days of the battle, the Galactic Council had sent representatives to make contact with humanity. The Council was a loose group of peaceful species that shared information and trade, but had never formed a real military alliance. Ambassador General Alan Price had been chosen to represent humanity at the Emergency Council meeting. He was a diplomat who had spent 20 years negotiating treaties between human colonies, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Council, Meeting was held on a neutral space station near the Galactic Center. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss what they called the human situation. "We have reviewed the battle reports," said Council Speaker Zethkara, a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms. "Your species destroyed a devourer fleet that had been terrorizing our region of space for decades. This is unprecedented." Price sat calmly at the human delegation table. "We received a distress call and responded to it. I do not understand why this is so surprising to you." "Because," interrupted Representative Hivemoth from the insectoid, "clicking species, most civilizations would have ignored such a signal. The risk was enormous, the potential reward was nothing. By all logical calculations, humans should have done nothing." "Then your calculations are missing something important," Price replied. "You are missing the concept of doing what is right instead of what is profitable." The council chamber erupted in clicking, buzzing, and various alien sounds that the translation computers turned into expressions of disbelief. Several species had never heard of anyone fighting a war purely to help strangers. Speaker Zethkara called for order. "Ambassador Price, we must ask you directly. What does humanity want in exchange for your military protection?" "Nothing," Price said simply. "Nothing," repeated Representative Silandra from the aquatic flowing people. "You want no territory? No trade privileges, no tribute? We want nothing except for species like the Devourers to stop killing innocent people," Price explained. "If other civilizations want to trade with us or share technology, we are interested. But we do not require payment for stopping genocide." The alien representatives looked at each other with expressions that needed no translation. Fear, confusion, and hope mixed together in ways that most of them had never experienced. Back in the Corvani system, Admiral Collins was establishing something that would change galactic politics forever. The Corvani Protection Fleet was a joint human-alien force designed to prevent future attacks on peaceful civilizations. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Turner had been chosen to command the first mixed-species unit in human history. His ships included both human vessels and rebuilt Corvani bioships, working together to patrol the outer systems and watch for signs of Devourer survivors. "Colonel Turner," reported Lieutenant Susan Hayes from the sensor station, "we are receiving another distress signal. This one is coming from the Gentle Ring system, about 15 light-years from here." Turner looked at the signal analysis. Another peaceful species was under attack, this time by something called the Burning Swarm. The attackers were different from the Devourers, but just as deadly. "Signal Admiral Collins," Turner ordered. "Tell him we have another situation." Within hours, human ships were jumping to hyperspace again, heading toward another system where innocent people were calling for help. It was becoming a pattern that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. The news of human intervention spread quickly. Species that had never heard of Earth began sending their own distress signals when pirates, raiders, or other aggressive civilizations attacked them. Every signal was investigated. Every call for help was answered. Commander Jake Morrison, still stationed at Titan 7, found himself processing dozens of alien transmissions every day. His small monitoring station had become the center of a galactic communication network. "Lisa, look at this," he called to his partner, as another signal came through. "This one is from a species called the Spiral Builders. They are asking for help against something called the Dark Fleet." Lisa Beck studied the incoming data. "That makes 12 distress calls this week, Jake. How many ships does Admiral Collins have available?" "Not enough," Jake replied. "But he will find a way. He always does." The pattern continued for months. Human fleets responded to every distress call, fought every aggressor, rescued every civilian they could find. The galaxy began to change as word spread that there was finally someone who would stand up to bullies and killers. The Devourers, meanwhile, had learned a lesson that would save many lives. In their databanks, they created a new category of species: never approach. Humans were the first civilization to earn this designation not through negotiation or tribute, but through sheer overwhelming violence applied in defense of others. Elder Veltar stood in his rebuilt city and watched human and Corvani children playing together in the gardens. The sight would have been impossible just months ago, but now it was normal. Human families had chosen to stay in the Corvani system, helping with reconstruction and defense. A young human girl named Amy was teaching a group of Corvani children how to play a game called tag. The plant-based aliens moved slowly, but were learning to enjoy the concept of play, something their species had almost forgotten during the months of terror. "Elder," said Captain Morgan as he joined Veltar in watching the children, "the Council has asked us to establish permanent defense stations in 47 systems. We are going to need more ships. And you will build them," Veltar said with certainty. "Because that is what humans do. When someone needs help, you answer." Morgan nodded. "The galaxy is a big place, Elder. There are a lot of people out there who might need help someday. And when they call," Veltar said, "you will come." "Yes," Morgan agreed. "We will come." In the depths of space, monitoring stations across human territory continued to listen for signals. Every transmission was analyzed. Every call for help was heard. The message was spreading throughout the galaxy in dozens of languages and communication methods. When the innocent are threatened, when the weak are attacked, when genocide rears its ugly head, there is a species that will answer. Humanity had found its place in the galactic community. They were the species that others called when monsters came in the night. They were the ones who said, "Never again," and meant it. The stars were vast and full of dangers, but they were also full of hope. Because somewhere in that darkness, Deathworlders were listening, ready to bring light to any corner of the universe where it was needed.